Hey everyone, my name is Sophie from Sophisticated Organization. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. In today's video, I'm going to give you a tour of my organized pantry. I have given tours of other spaces in my apartment, like my bathroom and my closet. I already did my kitchen, but I left out my pantry because that's exactly what we're gonna do today. First things first, I feel really lucky to have a pantry like this in an apartment. My previous apartment also had a pantry. It was about half the size. So having one this size, especially in an apartment, is pretty lucky, I think. It is more common, especially in the US, to have pantries these days in newer build homes or newer apartments. I know outside of the US, it's not necessarily as common to have a full dedicated pantry space to food storage, but even if you're in a location that doesn't necessarily have a pantry, hopefully you get a little bit of inspiration and enjoy seeing what my organized pantry looks like. With this first look of my pantry, you're probably noticing that I am a big fan of decanting products. If you aren't familiar with the word decanting used in this sense, you're probably familiar with it when we're talking about decanting wine, but it's also very popular in the organizing world, talking about pouring the contents of one item from its original packaging into another container. So I like to decant my dried goods as well as some of my oils, which we'll touch on in a minute. But my favorite container for dried goods is the Oxo Pop Containers. I've used these forever. My mom actually used them, so I grew up using them, and they are my favorite to keep food items sealed and keep them lasting longer, as well as making your pantry look super high-end and beautiful. But I think before we dive into anything else, let's just kind of work top to bottom. That makes the most sense to me. On the top shelf is where I decided to put all of my baking items. If you've followed me for a while, you know that I am a baking lover. It's one of my passions beyond organizing. But even though I love baking, I don't access all of my baking items on a daily basis. So it makes the most sense for me to put things that I don't use every single day way up top. And even though I'm 5'4", I can easily grab these items and pull them down whenever I need them, but it's just not as easy to grab as maybe this next shelf down. So baking goes up high. Starting from the left, I have my flour and my sugar in the largest containers that they make with the Oxo Pop Containers. That is because, first of all, I go through those faster, but also because when you buy, let's say, a 5-pound bag of flour, I don't want to have a little tiny container and slowly pour in that flour, because then I'm just going to have a giant backup stash of items, and it kind of defeats that purpose of decanting. When I get a new bag of flour, I want to be able to tip it all the way upside down, pour it in my container, and throw away that packaging. So think about how often you use products and how quickly you're moving through it, as well as the size packages you buy when you're figuring out what products you want to buy for decanting your food into. After the sugar and flour, the next most commonly used, I have my almond flour, my chocolate chips. I have whole wheat flour back there as well, bread flour, and almond flour. After that, I have the smaller sizes of containers for the more miscellaneous baking products. I have walnuts back there, baking powder, powdered sugar, some collagen powder that I use in my coffee and different teas. I have cocoa powder back there, and all of those weird things that I don't need giant containers for. The other thing that I should mention with this pantry is it does kind of go deep back on either end. And on this side here, I have all of my vases kind of tucked back there because I don't need them very often. And then on the other side, I have all of my almond milk and coconut milk that I buy in bulk from Costco. It's shelf stable, so tucking it back there is a great use of space for me. I don't need to go there very often. I just pop open my little expandable step stool, grab exactly what I need, and pop it in the fridge. So that's a perfect use of space for me. Moving down to the next shelf, you'll see I have lots more OXO containers with more dried goods in my pantry. And a quick note here, if you're thinking about labeling your pantry items, I would try and keep those labels as broad as possible unless you know that it's a true staple of yours that you are constantly buying and always using, or else you're just gonna find that you have to replace that label, or you're pouring food items in there that don't actually match that label. So a great example is you'll see my pasta containers. I label them pasta as opposed to spaghetti or rotini or any other type of pasta that you can think of, because I buy different types of pasta and I don't want to lock myself into exactly what it is. Another thing where I have a broad category, you'll see I have 2 small containers that say nuts. Sometimes I have little pine nuts in there. Sometimes I have like candied walnuts that I buy for salads in there, and it switches out as opposed to my almonds and cashews that I have labeled almonds and cashews because I always have them on hand. So hopefully that helps you a little bit thinking through what you want to put on your labels if you're going to label your pantry items. Another question I get a lot of times talking about decanting pantry items is, how do I keep track of the recipes or instructions, and how do I keep track of expiration dates? Those are both very simple fixes. For expiration dates, you can use a marker and actually write on the bottom of it the exact date that was on the container that you decanted it from. For instructions and recipes, I have a great solve for this. I buy these little adhesive pockets and add them to the outside of my containers. You can slip in nutrition facts, or again, any sort of recipe or instructions that you might need to cook the item or whatever it might be. It's super simple and a great solve. On this shelf, you'll see that I try to do 2 layers of products. So I have a taller layer of products as well as a little shorter one in the front. So whenever I need something in the back, it's pretty easy for me to just grab something out of the way, reach for the larger item in the back, and then put the smaller one back. So not a big deal at all. And I really wanted to take advantage of all of that space as much as I could. The other thing I have on this shelf is a very large Lazy Susan, which I'll link in the description box below because it's great to find a Lazy Susan that's this large. And because my pantry goes back here, as I told you, I think using this Lazy Susan really takes advantage of that space. So you'll see I have other random items on here like honey, my salt, baking powder, I have coconut oil, some flaky sea salt I use when I bake. I have a couple of protein powders, toothpicks, all of that stuff, but it's perfectly accessible with this Lazy Susan and it takes advantage of that space. Another thing I have hidden behind here is my homemade vanilla extract. So I actually make my own vanilla extract, and it takes a while for the beans to soak in that alcohol for it to be completely ready to use in your recipes. So I store it back there in the way back of my pantry. It's nice to have it in a cool, dark place until it's ready for me to use. Moving down to the next shelf, I think this one's actually my favorite, probably because of this spice shelf. And you may think this is an excessive amount of spices. You're entitled to your own opinion. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I have the space to have it displayed this way. I cook extremely often. I feel like I use all of these spices, so I personally enjoy it. So this is how I chose to display all of my spices. And I have them in rainbow order right now. I've played around with doing them in alphabetical order, but I like the look of it in the rainbow order. So that's the way I do it. I'm the one who cooks in the house, so I know exactly where to find things, so it works for me. Again, taking advantage of the sides of the pantry in that dead space, I have all of my extra spices here, so that's some backups that might fill into these, some that I don't actually have containers for because they're used less often or they're newer maybe, as well as some seasoning packets and other things like this. So great use of that dead space again. On the other side of this shelf, another reason this shelf is my favorite is because of this rotating Lazy Susan with all of my oils and vinegars. So I have my olive oil front and center because that's what I use the most often. And then I split it either direction, going oils and vinegars, if that makes sense. So going to the left here, I have balsamic vinegar, sherry vinegar, red wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar. I have my balsamic reduction. And then on the other side of the olive oil, I have more oils again. Grapeseed oil, sesame oil, and then you'll see I have my extracts, that homemade vanilla extract that I'm moving through, a few other extracts, and then my cooking sprays. After this Lazy Susan, I have a little can organizer that's a 2-tiered shelf riser. I put random things on there. I don't have a ton of canned goods that often, but I keep some for sure on hand, as well as chicken stock and chicken broth. And I have some rice at the bottom there, some leftover drink mixes that I made from another video that I shared with you guys, which I can link in the cards above for Valentine's Day. So I'm almost through that, but I just use whatever is kind of miscellaneous in that area as well as canned items. The next shelf down, I keep pretty simple. The two containers that I have over here, I store any fruits or veggies that are meant to store in the pantry and not in the refrigerator. Things like onions or potatoes, I will put bananas in there, things like that. But I really like the containers because you can store them side by side like I have here. Or if we move and I have a different space and I want to stack them on top of each other, you can easily stack them on top of each other as well, which I think is really great. I liked that they were white and they matched the rest of the look of the pantry. So super easy for me to throw things in there and it's pretty low maintenance. The next container that I have no idea where I got it from. I will try and find a link to it if I can. It is something that I've had probably since I was in college, and I try and repurpose any organizing supplies that I have so I don't have to go out and buy new things. Organizing products can be expensive, so this works great in my pantry. It has my garlic keeper. Right now it has peanut butter in it, some lentils in the back, and then we just have a few drink mixes back there. We were obsessed with Mio for a while, and I still actually really like it and like adding it to my water because I'm terrible about drinking water, but we definitely have too many. We probably only need one or two, not however many we have back there. So I need to keep working through them. On the rest of the shelf, we have our water bottles and our travel mugs. I do have some disposable travel mugs in there. I mostly use them when I would go hiking or skiing and bring coffee with me, or even like a smoothie I would drink on the way up to go hike or ski, and didn't want to leave that in the car all day long sitting and getting super gross, and I wanted to be able to throw it away. So it's not something I use on a daily basis. If I'm bringing coffee to work or anything like that, I use our reusable travel mugs. So trying to go through those disposable ones, and hopefully we don't need them again. But I'm also taking advantage of that side space. I have rice packs that you heat in the microwave. They're like 90-second rice packs from Target. I love to cook. I cook so many things from scratch. I make pizza and I make the dough from scratch. I love baking. I love making everything by hand. But for some reason with rice, I cut corners and I still use microwavable rice. My husband really likes the Target rice containers, and they have a few different varieties we really like. We like their Spanish rice. We have it when we have taco night. Their basmati rice is really good. So you know what? Sometimes you just need to cut corners, and rice is where I cut corners. We're moving down, so I took a seat so you can see exactly what's on the floor of the pantry. I have this container back here with all of our backstock paper towels. Great spot to store it in the kitchen for us so we can easily refill paper towels when they run out. I can see exactly how much I have left. Then I have our Kitchenaid Mixer. We're in an apartment. I have a very large kitchen for an apartment kitchen, but this feels like the best spot to store it so I'm not taking up other space in the kitchen or other kitchen cabinets. And it's easy for me to pull out. The countertop and the island where I bake is right in front of me, so I can just pull it right out and pop it on the countertop. And then we have these containers here. I definitely had these when I was in college, probably under my bed, storing things like socks and other clothing items, and I've just repurposed them in this pantry. And like I said, I wanted to save money, reuse products when we moved into this apartment, and not have to buy all new organizing systems. So using things that can switch from room to room or space to space really helps save money. So we repurposed them. I put some fun labels on here. We have snacks. I don't have a ton of snacks usually in our pantry. I'm sure you saw above. I've had that question before. Where do you keep your snacks? We don't really buy snacks. So I have this labeled as snacks. Sometimes it turns into extra backstock. I have extras, that is extra backstock. And then at the way bottom, I have baking. It can be backstock baking items as well as other baking items that I don't necessarily decant into those OXO containers that are at the top of my pantry. In the other two plastic bins, we have our trash bags. that's my husband's chore in the apartment. He takes care of the trash, so I love that because I hate taking out the trash. He deals with refilling the trash bags and all of that stuff. Then I have backup cleaning products, so sponges and other items. And this, I've actually gone through a lot of it since we've moved in, so this is getting smaller. Then I have my giant baking bin. So many fun things in there. I have my rolling pin, my turntable for when I make cakes, all of my cupcake and cake decorating items. And then way back here, I'm going to show you exactly what I store in that little tiny extra space and take advantage of that last few inches of my pantry. I know you can't totally see behind there, but I pulled out my little cupcake carrier that I have. I don't know if I would say it's like my love language or my way of showing that I care about my friends and family, but I love to bring baked goods whenever I do some sort of gathering with friends or family. I always want to volunteer to bring something and really like to bring dessert, so this thing comes in handy for sure. You can actually pop out the cupcakes through here, which is really fun. And then I have backup oils and things that I put into my oil and vinegar containers over here as well. And then a small container with all of my cookie cutters. Yes, I have more baking supplies separate from here. I couldn't even fit my cookie cutters in this giant baking bin, so I had to store them separately. That's it for my organized pantry tour. I will try and link everything I can in the description box below. If you have any further questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. I'll try and get back to each and every one of you. I love interacting back and forth in the comment section, so I would love if you said hello. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.